Good morning, Warner. How's everybody doing? Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to announce the people who are going to be coming up to speak to you today. It's a little bit of an alternative chapel. We're not going to be doing any singing. We're not going to be doing any message. We're just going to be hearing stories from your classmates about their journeys and invite you to walk into their stories this morning. So kind of the format this morning is going to be from song to story. We encourage the speakers this morning to choose a song from their life that echoed a story. And we kind of wanted to create a creative way to step into their story. So you're going to be hearing from 5 very different people who you go to school with. The point of this morning's chapel is to hear their stories and see how they echo yours or how they can influence yours and inspire yours. Without further ado, I'm going to encourage you this morning from the Message version of 1 John 1 through 4, if it's going to come up on the Bible app. Awesome. From the very first day we were there, taking it all in. We heard it with our own ears. We saw it with our own eyes, verified it with our own hands. The word of life appeared right before our eyes. We saw it happen. And now we're telling you in the most sober prose that what we witnessed was, incredibly, this. The infinite life of God himself took shape before us. We saw it, we heard it, and now we're telling you so you can experience it along with us. This experience of communion with the Father and his Son, Jesus Christ. Our motive for writing is simply this. We want you to enjoy this too. Your joy will double our joy.
Hello. This is the first time I've spoken in front of people since I was 6, so bear with me. Growing up, my parents got divorced when I was really young. My dad is Blackfoot, Native American, and my mom is white. I lived with my mom, who was very abusive, both physically and emotionally. She was also a hardcore Christian who used prayer as her rumor mill and used us to get her attention. I was constantly being accused of things that I didn't do and was perceived as a person that I wasn't. But growing up, it just seemed normal to me because I didn't know anything else. And when I was 14, I got my first boyfriend, and we were together for a year, and we went too far. And my mom found out, and of course that meant everyone else found out, and his parents ended up moving him away and taking him away from me, and which led then to a lot of depression and anxiety and anger. And I ended up dating one of my best friends a while later, and he ended up passing away. And so I kind of gave up on having a real relationship, which led to a lot of destructive behavior, and nothing too bad, but I ended up drinking a lot one day and got attacked by a neighbor of mine and ended up pregnant. And I was 17 years old, and I ended up having him, which led to a lot of my mom getting more attention from her daughter doing things she shouldn't do. And I ended up moving out at 18 with my son and having a string of very abusive relationships. And I think it was because it was what I knew from my mom. And that just led me to feeling more and more like that's all I deserved. I didn't deserve any better than that. And ended up having 2 more children in those relationships. And finally, after being attacked too many times by them in front of my children and having CPS involved, I decided to get my life together and to leave all of that behind me and do what I needed to do for my family. And with that, a person from work said that they needed a place to stay and would pay me rent. And so I took that opportunity to be able to be on my own, and he ended up attacking me as well, and I became pregnant again. And after that, I was not going to go back into the place I was at. I wasn't going to go back into depression. I was going to take what I had and move forward with my life. And I decided through that I would go back to school. And it took a few years, and I ended up with my boyfriend, the first one that I had. We ended up staying friends throughout the years, and watched each other. We both got married and got divorced, and we stayed friends. And a couple years after I was okay with being by myself, we got back together and got married. And he pushed me to do what I needed to do for me and to go back to school. And that's how I ended up here at Warner Pacific. And through Warner Pacific, I got in touch with the other half of me, my dad's half, my Native American half. And through my FYLC, which was about the Native people in Portland, which got me in contact with the Wisdom of the Elders, which I intern with now. And I now feel like pieces of my soul that were gone are now being filled back up. And I'm back to being a whole person, and I'm able to do what I need to do. And I just want you all to know that no matter what you've been through in your lives, and if you feel like no one is there for you, that one girl in chapel, that she prays for you guys every day, and that she knows you can do it.
Hi guys, my name is Nadia. So what is home? Is home a place? Is home family? Is home where you think you belong? This has been a question that I thought a lot about in my life. Grew up in a Christian home, and life was pretty good. And when I was 9, my dad got a job in China, so we all moved to Beijing. And I didn't want to go because I'm not Chinese and I don't know anyone there. And look at me, I'm not Chinese. Anyway, so we moved to China, and after a year there, I was like, wow, I'm Chinese. This is great. And I felt at home. That's where my friends were. That's where my food was. Those were my people. 我会说中文，因为我是中国人. And yeah, so and I learned a lot about myself, a lot about God. And one of my friends, she moved back to the States and gave me her guitar. So I learned how to play guitar over there, and life was great. And then when I was 13, my dad told me that in 4 weeks we'd have to move back to the States. And I was like, what? Like, this is my home, and now we have to move. And so we moved on December 21st, 4 days before Christmas. So that was tough, and I decided that they were wrong. I was right. I'm gonna be miserable. And then they'll see that I was right. So I decided just to be miserable and not have any friends, and there's no way that was my home. So I was miserable, and it was terrible, and it was my fault. And I lived like that for a year and a half of just not wanting to be there and just being discontent and spending a lot of time by myself. And if you know me, you know I'm an extrovert and I need people, but I figured, I'm fine. So, and then when I was 15, I heard a sermon in my youth group about contentment and what is contentment? And I realized I don't have contentment. And I was just trying so hard to live my own life and be in charge of my own life that I was this is not how God wanted me to live. This is He wants me to live full of joy and live full of peace, not try my own thing. So I just surrendered everything, and I was like, okay, God, I guess this is home now. Great. So then, living in the States, I still didn't really know what home was, but I know home's where God is, and He's with me. So then when I was 17, graduated high school, had a gap year and went to South Africa. And I'm like, okay, I want this to be home. So South Africa was my home for a year. And then I came back to the States, and right before I did, my parents told me, because we had lived in Seattle for a long time, after that, that they told me that they're moving to Texas. I'm like, okay, now where's home? Because previously, like, that's where my parents were, or, like, so I realized, like, when I came to Warner, I'm like, okay, Warner's gonna be my home, but I was still homesick, but I was like, no, I'm not homesick, because Warner's my home, I'm fine. And my friend's like, it's okay to be homesick, like, it's okay. And so I realized that, like, ultimately, my home's in heaven, and this is just a pit stop. And, like, and God is gonna do amazing things, and if my security is in him and who he is as my father, I don't have to worry about finding home. And like the song says, like, no, you're not alone. I'm gonna make this place your home. And so all this loneliness that I felt that God doesn't want me to feel, I don't feel anymore, because I know that where he is, he's with me, and I know I'm not alone. And in South Africa, we had this week called Solitude Week, where we had to spend like a week in the woods. We camped out, and we had an apple, a banana, a pear, and a potato to eat per day. And we couldn't talk to anyone during the day. And it was like, I love people, and it was really hard. And at first I felt really lonely, because I was like, there's no one to talk to, and God's like, hello, talk to me. And I'm like, okay, hi. And it was really good. And I learned a lot about contentment. And you know the verse that says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength? Like, people do use that verse to do stupid things. Like, I can do all things. Yay, I can fly. But no, what it means, like, before that, it says, I've learned, like, I know what it is to have nothing. I know what it is to have everything. I've learned the secret in contentment. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And so anyway, day 5, I woke up in the middle of the night and really bad chest pains, and ended up going to the hospital because I was dehydrated. I had a half a bottle of water to drink the day before. I don't recommend that. My stomach was like empty, and my body was just freaking out. So I was in the hospital. The doctor spoke only a little bit of English, and I had nothing at all. And I was lying in the hospital bed, hooked up to an IV, and I was like, God, I'm completely content. You are all I need, and this is awesome. So that's how I learned about contentment. And I just want to encourage you that life is crazy and life is weird, and things will happen that you don't see coming, but know you're not alone, and you have friends and family that surround you and love you so much, and God knows what you need, and you can trust him. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Colton. This song impacts me a lot. I remember being 13 years old, and on May 15th, 2010, the day after my father had just died of being in a coma for 2 weeks. And I couldn't do anything. I remember feeling so just covered with like something bogging me down, and the only words I could utter were why? Why me? Why my dad? Why is he gone? Where's he going? He took his own life. The church says he's going to hell. Will I ever see him again? And for me, like, that put me in such a state of depression and such a state of struggle that I didn't even have my own why of where I was going and what I was going to do and why I was even living. And it took everything from me. I don't know how else to explain it besides there was nothing left for me to do. And so the first time I heard this song was the day after my dad passed, May 15th, 2010. And at first it meant to me that I'm going to be there soon. I'm gonna either be in heaven or hell real soon, because I'm going to take my own life. I'm gonna go. I don't have a reason to be here. And then in that time, I moved away from my home of Casper, Wyoming, and moved to Newcastle, Wyoming. And in that, I saw an opportunity for transition. And so if some of you heard my story earlier in the year, that is when I decided I'm going to be a Christian because I want to be happy. And that was the only people that I saw were happy, whether it was fake or not. And so at that moment, I heard that song again on the ride to Newcastle for the first time in my life. And I remember just hearing the first part where it says, I have asked the questions why. And I looked back on that day, and the only thing I could say was why. And then the next line says, maybe the questions are for another time. And I don't know what that did. I don't know why that changed, but it did. And so I remember standing there and saying, like, I am going to be different. And I am going to live this life and see what it does, but I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where my dad is, whether he's in heaven or hell. That doesn't matter, because my why is here, and my why is my family and my friends and my home. And it gives me a reason that I live. And the soon that the song talks about, that's in the scheme of eternity, not in my life, not in this time, not in this decade, not in this century. And so just know that this is temporary, any pain you're going through, and find your why, find your purpose, and it makes this life so much more joyful.
I remember the first time that I heard that song. I was driving down 3rd Street with my older brother and his super beat up Impala, and I never knew that this song would mean so much to me now, like listening to it then. Before I start talking, even though I just was talking, but before I start my story, I just want to kind of say that I really struggled with being comfortable enough to come talk about this part of my life. So just at your mercy, please have an open heart and an open mind when I speak. So growing up, my family has experienced everything from deportation to incarceration and everything in between. I grew up with my single mom, and when that didn't work out, I went to my single dad, and when that didn't work out, I went to any family member that could take me in at the time. My dad lived in Echo Park, which is in Los Angeles, and it's a very, very gang-oriented area. My older brothers, I have 2 older brothers and 2 younger brothers, but my 2 older brothers were like my role models. I wanted to be just like them because I thought they were so cool, and they were just so funny, and I don't know, like everything I ever wanted was for them to love me, because at home I never felt accepted or loved by them because they were never there and they were always busy out with their friends and doing this and this. And moving from my mom to my dad, I didn't have any friends in LA, so I just, I wanted to feel accepted and loved. And my older brothers were members of the local gang, the Echo Park Locos, or EXP. And so to be like them, I joined. It was, being a loco was like the thing to do. Like, if you wanted to have friends or feel any type of acceptance, like that was it. Like I mentioned, like my family didn't really show me that love, and becoming a loco I knew was really dangerous and really scary because you don't know if you make it out. Like, not everyone does. Being a loco made me see more funerals. I've never been to a wedding before, but I've only been to funerals. They made me feel safe though, and they made me feel accepted, and that's why I stayed. I joined when I was almost 12 years old, which is scary. I was so young, and that really put a fear in my eyes, like for my younger brothers growing up, because I didn't ever want them to have to do what I did. Sorry. Yeah, they made me feel safe. I realized in that time, though, that I made bad decisions, but that didn't mean I was a bad person necessarily. You do things for like the greater good of the group kind of. So I did make a lot of bad decisions, and I hurt a lot of people, and people hurt me, but you got to tough it out. If, you can't show them that you're sad. In that song, you'll smile for your friends and cry later. You don't cry in front of people, because then you're weak, and you're alienated and outcasted in the group that you're in. And that was the whole reason I was in it, was to feel accepted. So why would I show any type of emotion ever and show them that I was sad at home or show them this or this? Because I wanted them to think I was cool. And something that I didn't really take into consideration was, at the end of the day, they made me feel safe and accepted and like I had friends. But at the end of the day, it was every person for themselves. And I know that when there's a situation and we were both kind of like, well, it's either you or me, it sucks, because then you realize that they didn't really care about you in the beginning. I never actually told either of my parents that I was a loco. They still don't know, so I hope they never find out, honestly. But I never really left. I never swore out, which is still kind of scary. So technically, I'm a loco, but not really. I never swore. I just moved, because it was that time where my dad was like, well, I can't take care of you anymore, so you're going to have to go to your mom. So I was like, oh, okay, thanks. Kind of like what Nadia was saying, that place became my house, my home, that was it. Echo Park's all I knew. I didn't know how to live in Carlsbad, California, which was predominantly Caucasian. There was no gangs. I didn't know what to do there. It was scary. So all I knew was Echo Park, and it was being a loco was definitely the biggest blessing and the biggest demon I've ever had to face, all in one. Because being a loco, I found out what, as weird as it sounds, I found out what compassion was, because I never experienced it anywhere else. And it was fake love that they gave me, but it felt real at the time. And, but obviously it was a huge demon in my life. I never knew if I was gonna wake up the next morning, or where I was gonna be, or if I was gonna be in jail. I didn't know any of this. And every day I wake up now, I just thank whoever's up there. I never thought that I would make it into high school. I never thought I'd live to see high school, let alone graduate, let alone get into college. College was never anything I ever dreamed about in my entire life. Yeah, that was gnarly. But recently over winter break, I went back to Echo Park to see my dad, and that was really scary, because I saw some people that I used to know in that scene, and I saw them robbing liquor store, and it just hit me, that could have been me, right now, I could still be in that and be doing that. And that's the scariest thought, in that I would still be there, trapped in Echo Park. I guess if there's something I want you to take away from this whole experience that I've had, it's that not all gang members have a choice, they don't all have a choice of why they swear in. Some people do it for the status, or to be able to say they did this or did this, but some people do it because they feel like there's no other place for them. And that was kind of what happened to me. And I want to say that all people are affiliated with something, whether it be Crip or a Blood, or your race, or your sexual orientation, or your gender. We're all affiliated, and just because my affiliation was a bad one doesn't mean I'm a bad person. I guess back to the song, to kind of close out, that the line is, so I'ma smile for my friends and cry later. I'm about to smile for my friends and cry later. It's okay to cry now and to cry later.
So, I always get that my story is a little unexpected. I grew up in a home in Beaverton, Oregon, My dad had a really good job. It was my parents, my sister, and our dog. But the reality is, my family was really broken. When I was in 6th grade, I stopped having my friends sleep over at my house because I was afraid that we would wake up on a Saturday morning and just hear my dad slamming the cabinet doors and screaming at my mom. He would come home from work on the weekdays, and for years we had the same conversation. He would stand at the bottom of the stairs and he would shout up hello. And on the days that I didn't pretend that I was sleeping or that I couldn't hear him, I would say hello back, and he would ask me how my day was, and I would say good. And I was lying through my teeth. I'm sure that sounds familiar for some of us. While I responded good to my dad, it felt like my world was absolutely falling apart. I dealt with anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts, and I hid behind the lie of I am good. When in reality, I would have emotional breakdowns and curse a God that I didn't really know for giving me the family I had and for making me feel the way that I did. Because when my dad and I hardly said a word to each other, my mom and I couldn't seem to bite our tongues, and we would yell, and we would get loud, and we would just get really angry. This is normally the part of my story where I get these perplexed looks, because as much as the girl that I described is me, at the same time, she's not at all. You see, in 11th grade, I went to church for the first time, and I started this new chapter of my life that I'm living right now. I learned of a God who didn't want to leave me in my brokenness or my sadness or my depression. I was redeemed by God. My story itself was redeemed by God. And very slowly, day after day, I wouldn't be overcome with anxiety or depression, but I would know this peace and joy that can really, honestly, only be found in God Himself. I experienced freedom, and I learned that our pain, as hard as it is, it's not meant to be endured forever. You're not meant to have depression for 10 years or social anxiety for 6 or an eating disorder for 4. Pain is not meant to be endured. It's meant to be broken, and that's what redemption is. It's about breaking the cycle of brokenness. I realized through God that we're meant to experience freedom in the way of peace and joy and feeling accepted and loved. And we're free to be who we're meant to be because the you that's found in God is the best you you're ever going to get. And you might be thinking it's not that easy because, trust me, I have those thoughts too to this day. Sometimes it's not that easy. But it's not about not being angry or not being sad or today I'm not going to feel like I'm not loved. It's about finally knowing and understanding that our stories are redeemed and validated by Jesus. Because my story of redemption, I really believe, is meant to be all of ours. About a year ago, right around this time, my dad and I started having a relationship for the first time. I was 20, and we went out to lunch. I'd never done this with my dad. And we sat and we talked, and it was good. And for this last year, we've been working on that and getting to know each other. For years, I was angry at my dad for ripping my family apart. And he's never apologized for the way that he talked to my mom or made me fear him or made me think about him. He didn't apologize for not being the dad that little girls dream about having. Because in my story, it's not about what my dad can do or say to redeem himself. It's about what God can do to redeem our relationship. Because Jesus is a father to the orphaned at heart. Because a relationship with God has made me whole again. Because I am not who my past says I am sometimes. I can look at my dad and say that he's my absolute favorite person in the world. I really love my dad. I do. As crappy as our relationship has been for the first 19 years of my life, he's my favorite person in the world. Jesus, as a redeemer, showed me that there's a life worth living 100% devoted to him. He can change absolutely any story, no matter where you're at in it. Even if you think you can't, you're selling yourself short by not giving him a chance. Because Jesus really just needs one chance to get a hold of you.
Thank you so much to our speakers this morning. Give them another round of applause, please. I don't know about you guys, but when I hear people's stories, it not only changes my understanding of them, but also a part of me, and it helps me become more compassionate to my neighbors. And that's really what the main point of this chapel was for you to gain perspective on your neighbors and classmates here at the school to create authentic community at Warner Pacific College. When you know people's stories, you know their needs, you know their values, and when you know those two things, we can go forward in being a better community. I am going to pray very quickly, and let's start with that. Thank you, Lord, so much for the stories that you have helped us author, Lord. We thank you so much for the specific stories that we heard today. We thank you for the things that we've seen, the things that we've heard, and the stories that we can go forth and share with others. Lord, I want to bless everybody as they go off to class today, that you would impart a certain joy and strength through these stories, Lord. And we pray this all in your name. Amen. If you'd like, I'm going to have the speakers up front for you to talk with. Also, if you need prayer, there will be some people up front as well. And you are dismissed.